Evolutionary podcast coming your way. Episode number 456. Stevesmi here and the Rickster Ricky V Rock. We have a special myth episode coming your way. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Steve? What's up, guys? How's everybody doing out there? And today's a real special episode. We're doing myths episode, but none of them have much to do with fitness, bodybuilding, or training. These are just popular myths episodes and what Steve and I's perspective, opinion is on each of them. You know, it's funny. A lot of you guys out there that listen to the show become familiar with both Steve and mine's sort of our personality, our opinions. You guys want to know what opinions we have on other things besides just steroids. You guys like to see what we think about interviews that are popular, what other people are saying. So this is just be a good episode so you guys can learn what Steve's and I opinions are on some of these myths, popular myths that are out there. Myths, conspiracy theories, I guess you can call them, at least the first one. Is that right, Steve? Yeah. What do you think? Fun episode?
Yeah, these are, and the nice thing about these are lighthearted. They're not like, it's not like, you know, we're going to get into like, you know, religion or politics or anything on these. And, you know, I hope you guys don't like take it, you know, that way at all, because these aren't. These are just things that are out there. These are certain things that exist out there. And there's pictures of these things, there's videos of these things, and there's sightings of these things. And you know, we can make an argument on one side that they're myths, and we can make an argument that they're real. So the first one we're going to talk about is the big one, and that's UFOs. So the interesting thing about this one that I find fascinating is if you look at some of the old drawings from like long ago, like thousands of years ago, you would see human beings drawing pictures of people on the ground. And then you'd see in the air pictures of these saucers, these flying saucers, and even beings in the flying saucers. So I find that fascinating how this, if it is a myth, then how could something like this have been known about thousands of years ago? Because back in those days, they didn't really understand. There was nothing flying up there, you know? The only thing that was in the air were birds. So, I mean, like, how could they come up with actually flying saucers and beings inside the flying saucers? So how would they even know that? Because they didn't understand about planets and the universe and all this stuff. So I think that's kind of fascinating. It's almost like they knew that there were, or they were witnessing these phenomena of these flying objects in the air that had actual weird looking beings on them. So I think that's fascinating. So let me touch base on this. You know, the universe is a big place. We know for a fact, based on meteors that have come from other places. For example, the meteor that came from Mars did have life on it. It had bacteria on it. So there is life on other planets. And it would be foolish to assume that we're the only planet in the universe that has life. So if there's another planet out there in a different solar system that's a certain distance from the sun, that has a certain rotation, where it gets the temperatures are mild and moderate the way they are on Earth, and there's plenty of water to sustain life, and it's not a crazy thing where it's 500 degrees or negative 500 degrees, where it'd be impossible for living creatures to survive. And there's not like tornadoes and wind and, you know, 1,000-mile-an-hour wind and all this other stuff like we see on planets, other planets like Jupiter or Saturn or you know, Neptune, where it's really, really cold, or on Mercury, where it's really, really hot, or on Venus, where it's toxic to even breathe. So there's another planet similar to Earth that has, you know, that's not toxic, and that has a, you know, it's the perfect size, and it's got the good weather and stuff. It'd be foolish to think that life can't survive there. So I think for sure, I mean, it's 100% that there is life outside the Earth somewhere. the question is, are those life forms visiting Earth? Another theory too could be that these flying saucers and stuff that we're seeing could be actually, they could be underwater, and it could be these beings that live deep into the ocean, and the flying saucers that we're seeing travel underneath the oceans, and they go above the ocean and they fly around sometimes. Could be that situation. So it's really an interesting debate on if we think that they're actually visiting us. So Rick, you're a big UFO guy. Why don't you tell the people what you think about that?
Very interesting. Very interesting situation. The whole UFO thing. Yeah. So look, Pentagon and the Air Force have already admitted that they've come across objects that are flying and they can't quite explain. A lot of sightings have been going on for ages. There's old carvings from different civilizations out there that actually make reference to beings coming in on ships and things like that. So, I mean, are UFOs real? They've kind of have to be, I think, at this point. There's the evidence, the evidence is kind of sort of overwhelming. I mean, there's guys have come out talking about they've been working on alien technology for the government. There's government officials, military officials that have come out and talked about their experiences with UFOs, real normal people. I mean, the evidence is so overwhelming, it'd be pretty hard to deny it. So are there beings that live in other planets, or maybe other dimensions, or maybe beings that live in our planet, maybe underwater, maybe deep in the earth? Who really knows where they're really coming from, or what they want, or what they're doing here? What could they possibly want? What could they possibly be doing here? If anything, they might just be observing and taking notes, looking at us, or maybe watching us the way we would watch an anthill. Stick a camera inside of an anthill just to see what's going on. Just curiosity. Look, we're humans. We're curious. We like to know how animals interact with each other, how social groups are formed, how ant colonies are built, termite. I mean, we like to see all these things as humans. So it's not beyond the scope of reality for some of these UFOs to be out here just studying human behavior and seeing what we're all about. Would they be coming down to enslave us and take our resources? Probably not. Probably not. There's millions of billions of zillions of trillions of dollars of precious metals just floating around space inside of these asteroids. Probably much easier to mine an asteroid than to try to come down here and take on our military, as rudimentary for them as it might be, and try to take our minerals. There is if they're traveling across galaxies to come here, or traveling beyond the speed of light even to be able to get over here, chances are they're able to terraform another planet or moon pretty close to them. So if they're after maybe growing some kind of produce that they eat or whatever, probably terraforming something nearby might be the better option than to bring a fleet over here to try to take over us and exterminate us. I mean, I don't see us having any more value to way more advanced civilization than ours, right? I don't see us having any more value to them than maybe just something to observe and look at. Oxygen they can make, terraform, or green gases, or anything to turn a planet into something inhabitable. They can make shit. We can make oxygen, right? With machinery, we can. I mean, precious metals, gold. Water. They're just fucking ice on a lot of different planets and moons. It's just that, and you can make water. You can make water by it's really the technology that these beings would need to have to be able to travel across the stars has to be well beyond anything we have. And here on Earth, we can actually make oxygen, make water. We can do these things. So there's just no reason to come here and take any of that. As far as like slaves and stuff, look, on Earth right now, we're worried that robots and AI are going to take over some jobs. There are robot arms right now that can fry food. There are, cars that are driving themselves. By the time we are actually able to make a spaceship that can travel beyond Pluto, you'd be damn fucking sure that trucks are going to be driving themselves. And when you walk into a fast food restaurant, there might not be a single human there at all. It might all be automated AI taking care of you, frying your food and giving it to you. So at that point, what do you need to enslave humans for? There's just no reason, no incentive. I mean, nothing. You know what I mean? So I just don't. I think we're just they're just curious about what we're doing here. Maybe a little bit worried that we're not going to survive as a species if we continue to ruin our planet and the way we have. Definitely. I think UFOs have to be, I mean, it's got to be real. These are beings that come from a place we don't know about, can't explain. Or maybe they're humans that are on a different level of technology and are not interacting with us or whatever, that they're there. There's just too much evidence, too many witnesses, too many videos, actual videos, hundreds of them from fighter jet cockpits videos. I mean, it's this shit is coming from reputable sources, guys. These are like Air Force pilots, officers that could endanger their career letting things out like this or talking about things like this, but they still are. I mean, the UFOs are for real, but what their plans are for us or what they want for us, they're probably just subserving. I don't think they need anything from us. I mean, you could mine an asteroid and get a ton of precious, valuable metals, and you don't need to come to Earth they don't need to travel the way to Earth for anything. They don't need our oxygen. They don't need our water. They don't need our metals, and they definitely don't fucking need us for anything, for shit. Definitely, they don't want to make us slaves. Look, humans don't even need slaves anymore. Some plantations that needed slave labor to be productive hundreds of years ago. Today, a single guy in a big ass tractor can do acres and acres and acres of farming in a tractor full of computers and robotic arms and sprayers and all this kind of stuff. It's just we've grown beyond really needing slaves, at least in the modern world. We've grown beyond these things. I don't see them coming over here for anything else than just research and benign causes. I don't think we're in any danger or we should be worried about any kind of invasions from the aliens. That's all I had to say about that.
So next one we're talking about is Loch Ness monster. So let me just explain this. 91% of species in the ocean have yet to be classified. And more than 80% of our ocean is unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. So we know that there is over 10 million species in the ocean that we haven't even discovered yet. All kinds of species, from fish to anemones to crabs and crustaceans and plants and all kinds of shit in the ocean. So Loch Ness monster is one that's interesting because it's been sighted in Scotland in a lake, which they call lochs. And that loch is 750 feet deep. So it's realistic that it could house, a few dozen or maybe 100 of these large dinosaur-like creatures that live underground. And that feed on fish and stuff like that. It's possible, but here's an interesting thing. There's parts of the United States that haven't even been discovered yet, and no human being has ever walked in. The Pacific Northwest, there's parts of the Pacific Northwest that are so dense forest that no human has gone through. Africa, same thing. There's parts of Africa that no modern human has walked in or traveled in. There's been some sightings in Africa of dinosaurs, believe it or not. And some of the local tribes have drawn them and have said and claimed that they exist, dinosaurs. And there's really no way to get in there into those parts of Africa for a human being to get through, because you can't access it by a boat. You can't access it by a helicopter because of a canopy. You can't access it by land because the forest is too dense. South America, same thing. There's parts of the Amazon rainforest that no human beings have ever walked through. So there's all kinds of creatures and stuff that we don't know about. So is it plausible there could be like a dinosaur-like creature that lives, in the ocean? Absolutely. And is there a chance that perhaps there's some underwater caves that it can get into a big lake like Loch Ness and actually be sighted by humans? It's possible for sure. It's possible for sure. So I think like I said, there's so many different creatures that would look like aliens. There'd be creatures that look like dinosaurs. There's all kinds of different creatures on this planet that we haven't discovered yet, and we will not discover in our lifetime. So absolutely, I think it's plausible that you have a large lizard-like underwater creature that people may have witnessed that could definitely live in large, deep lakes or in the ocean. And you got to remember, the ocean is extremely deep. I mean, there's parts of the ocean that are 12,000 feet deep, and 12,000 feet in miles. 12,000 feet in miles. Let me tell you how many miles that is. That comes out to two and a quarter mile. So can you imagine that? Two and a quarter mile deep. There's could be all kinds of creatures living at the bottom of the ocean that we have yet to even find. You hear stories all the time about planes crashing in the ocean and boats sinking, and they can't find them. They can't find the boats. Even in the Great Lakes, there's been boats that have sunk over the years in the Great Lakes, and they've been unable to find them because the Great Lakes are so deep. Let me see how deep the Great Lakes are. Great Lakes, let's see here what it says. Maximum depth of the lakes is 700 feet, while the average depth is 195 feet. So, there's all kinds of things that live in the ocean for sure. What do you think, Ray?
When it comes to Loch Ness, I don't really believe this one. Look, anything's possible, right? Anything's possible out there in the wild world, but the wild world of the unknown. But I just don't quite believe this one. First of all, Loch Ness is a freshwater lake. It's, in order for it to have a really large animal, it would have to have a ton of food. Like, for example, a humpback whale, and I looked this up as Steve was speaking, needs about 5,500 pounds of fish a day. A blue whale needs something like 8,000 pounds of fish, crustaceans, krill a day it can eat. I mean, large animals have large appetites. And from some documentaries I've seen and from some things I've read, the amount of fish needed for this animal to survive, it's just a lot. And now think about this. Is this a huge animal with a long neck, with a mouth and teeth, that's going around chasing freshwater fish and eating them one at a time? Because look, whales, they'll take in a big gulp of krill or another school of fish, and they'll engulf hundreds and hundreds of pounds of food in one shot. In one gulp, a blue whale, humpback whale can do. When you talk about an orca, orcas are way smaller, and they're around chasing seals. Some of them will eat shark livers. tunas. I mean, they're what do you, I can't imagine just a huge dinosaur size animal with teeth swimming around chasing pike, chasing, freshwater salmon. I mean, chasing, chasing minnows, chasing eels around. And how many would it have to catch in a day to eat, to have, I mean, to eat it? The only possibility for there to be a huge dinosaur size animal in Loch Ness is it would have to be a vegetarian. Like it would have to be a vegetarian, like the iguanas in the Galapagos Islands. It'd have to be a huge vegetable eating, maybe dinosaur lizard-like animal. Maybe not warm-blooded, might be cold-blooded at that point, who knows? But unless this thing is a freaking vegetarian and can just munch on vegetation all day without being bothered, nah, dude, big dinosaur-sized animal chasing sea trout and brown trout and eels around, eating them one at a time to get 5,000, 6,000 pounds of food. It's not going to happen. Other large animals that we know that could be that size or the largest animals that are water going that we have now, whales, their technique for getting as much food as they need is they engulf large schools of fish or krill. They don't chase single fish around. Even orcas, they go after huge fish. The largest fish, and I looked this up, ever caught in the Loch Ness Lake was less than 3 feet long. Less than 3 feet long was the largest fish, 7 kilograms, the largest fish ever caught in Loch Ness. How many of these? And look, in an animal with teeth is not going to engulf a school of fish. Orcas don't engulf whole schools of fish. It doesn't work out. At least not from any of at least we can't reference it back to any of the animals we have today. So the only way Loch Ness could exist is if it was a vegetable eating animal. And the only vegetable eating lizards that we kind of really know about that can get large like that, like iguanas, they're cold-blooded. And that's the other problem. It's that in the Galapagos, the average water temperature is 21.5 Celsius. That's the average water temperature year round. In Loch Ness, the average water temperature in Loch Ness is below 10 Celsius. So Loch Ness would seem to be way too cold for a cold-blooded animal to live in, especially that size. And I mean, the animal would need to be on the beach during the times of the day where the sun comes out to get some sun to warm itself up a little bit, the way crocodiles have to do. So we would see the animal beach somewhere, but for the animal to be a huge cold-blooded animal that's submerged in water water that's under 10 degrees Celsius doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It would have to be a warm-blooded vegetable eating dinosaur-sized animal. Right. You know what I mean? It would. So all of these things just, and the lake is too small. It's just all these things really don't point to it being a possible. If Loch Ness Monster was real and it was a meat eater, it would need to be in the ocean chasing orcas down, eating orcas, eating humpback whales, eating blue whales, in order to survive. It wouldn't be able to be at this tiny lake with fish that are less than 3 feet long. It's just kind of my opinion, unless this is just some unique animal that's nothing like anything we'd see in nature right now. And look, one of the reasons dinosaurs or the large size animals are no longer on Earth is because the Earth is cooler now than it was when dinosaurs were around. So I don't know. I just don't. It would have to be an animal that is unlike anything that we see alive in the animal kingdom today. That's just my opinion on Loch Ness.
All right, so next one we're going to talk about is Sasquatch, aka Bigfoot, aka Yeti, aka Alma. There's many different names. I'm not sure the South American version, what they call it in South America. Do you know? It's maybe look that
We
up.
don't, we don't, we don't, we don't. Yeah, we don't have that anywhere in South America that I can think of. But as
I
you're
don't
talking
know, bro. I
about it, I'm
think I
going
think
to
in the
look it up right
Andes
now.
Mountain, yeah, in the Andes Mountains, I think there is one. I forgot what it's called though. So on different continents, they have different names. But what we know about Bigfoot, based on some of the, there was a story in Washington State where they had a cabin and their cabin was broke into, food was stolen. They assumed it was a bear. There was some hair that were found by some kids, and they took the hair and they analyzed the hair, and this is what they came up with. They actually came up with it not being a bear, it not being a deer, no known animal that exists in the area, but they said it closely resembled some type of primate species. And they said the DNA was close to human and also close to a couple of the primates, like the gorilla, chimpanzee, etc. So this creature is apparently, some type of primate. It's some type of large primate. It's very shy. It's very intelligent. It's not like a bear that's going to just walk up to a trash can, open up the trash can and get food out of. It's very skittish and it knows to stay away from humans. So another theory behind it is they're also nocturnal. So they only come out at night. So if that's the case, they would obviously be much harder to locate. And because, what I talked about earlier, because in places like the Pacific Northwest where they are most common, and there's also been sightings in Florida in the Everglades, and they call it in Florida, they call it the skunk ape. So there's also been sightings in other states across the country that have a lot of woods and a lot of areas for them to hide. So, I think that I'm 99% sure that Bigfoot, Sasquatch is a real thing. It is some type of primate. And I think that they are very, very shy, and there's not many of them. They're very, very endangered. So Washington State is the only state that I could find that actually has a law banning the shooting of a Bigfoot. So you should see other states. Other states really need to do it because there's not many of these out there, and there's a good chance that they could go extinct as we continue to, expand and grow population. But since they are and they like to be in remote areas, that's kind of a good thing. That would give them an ability to stay around longer, I think. Rick, what are your thoughts on this one?
All right, so I'm not a big Yeti connoisseur. I don't know too much about it, but I know that there aren't any good, really reliable pictures of a Yeti. I know we don't have any real, proof of it besides some people's anecdotal evidence. Now, I did find a study. It's a 2014 study, so it's fairly recent. Is in the Royal Society publishing genetic analysis of hair samples attributed to Yeti, Bigfoot, and other anomalous primates. They received hair samples from around the world to try to determine if any of these came from a Yeti. Hair samples that were known or determined to maybe be a Yeti, possible Sasquash. And the results were that, with the exception of 2 samples, which yielded no DNA, no usable DNA, the other 20, because they had about 22 hair samples, all showed that they came from some sort of animal that we know, some mammalian species that's already known to man, often domesticated animals. So I'd have to look for the study that you're talking about. I hadn't heard about it before prior to this podcast, because I've kept my ear out, hoping someday we'll find a piece of hair or something that'll be from some kind of primate that we don't know what it is. And I hadn't seen it until you mentioned it on the show today. Everything I've seen before, everything that's been done for Sasquatch doesn't reveal that there is anything. Look, when you have dozens, at this point, dozens of cockpit videos from jet fighters that are looking at or watching UFOs do amazing things in the air that can't be done, that's pretty solid. But we don't have any one video like that, a real one for a Sasquatch. There's some videos of there are videos of guys walking around in monkey suits. Like those things are everywhere. But most of those have been really debunked because you could see the structure and how humans move. But so I just don't see the same kind of evidence. I think Sasquatch is trash. It's not real. I don't see it. I don't see any huge primates living in the mountains or living in isolation and just not wanting to come out. I don't quite see it.
Yeah, and there is one in South America. It's Strait of Magellan has them, and also Chile and Argentina mountains of the Andes. So they do. You gotta remember the gorilla wasn't discovered, bro, until gorillas weren't discovered at all until recently. You can look that up. Let me see here.
Maybe by white people, but all of those tribes in Africa from the beginning of time, they always knew gorillas were there.
But I mean, if you ask people in Tibet, like up in the mountains and the Buddhists and stuff, they'll say, yeah, Yeti exists. So they're like, yeah, it exists. But white people, the whatever say, oh, it doesn't exist, it's a myth. Well, the same thing with a gorilla. They used to think gorilla was a myth, and then the first person was a German.
Dude, gorillas humans have known about gorillas since before Shaka Zulu. I mean,
1902 was when it was first discovered by German
by white people. Yeah, German. Yeah. But the Africans knew gorillas were there all along.
Well, that's my point. But I actually look South America, the Mayans actually had pictures of this creature. I mean, not the Mayans, the other natives in South America, they had pictures of them. The Native Americans in the United States, in Canada, they had pictures of these creatures, from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So you see what I'm saying? So
one of the other things you got to remember is this: when you have animals like this, primates, for the most part, primates are social animals. It's very rare, extremely rare to find primates that are not in a social group. Off the top of my head, I can't even think of any either monkeys or great apes that just kind of hang out by themselves. So there would have to be a whole society of primates, youngsters.
There's groups of them.
There would have to be groups of them. But it always seems like sightings are just a single one, just one. That's
there's plenty. No, I've seen plenty of sightings where there's been a bunch, like a family of them. I've seen sightings when there's been 2 adults and 3-4 kids. So those sightings are out there too. But the ones maybe I think there's one adult. Maybe he's out hunting. Maybe it's the male or the female out hunting.
For the most part, primates are vegetarians. Some of them, like gorillas and chimpanzees especially, will hunt and kill and eat smaller monkeys and some smaller animals here and there. But for the most part, they're all vegetarian.
Yeah, the gorillas eat other monkeys too sometimes, or is that just chimpanzees I don't know, but I mean, there's been some sightings of these creatures that have attacked people, ran after people, and to me, that's not that they're trying to eat people; it's that they're very territorial. They're like, "Get the fuck out of my territory," and there was an attack in Russia years ago where there were campers. And they basically found them dead, and they couldn't figure out what killed them. It was some type of blunt force. It was something went in there that was very, very strong, and basically beat the shit out of them and killed them. You heard that story?
No,
it happened in Russia. Yeah, you're gonna have to Google that one. But yeah, that's they never found out what happened to those campers. A bunch of campers. It was 10, 12 campers, and they were all found dead. And bodies were scattered. Some of them were basically ripped apart. So it was some type of creature that went in there and just mutilated them, through blunt force. Very, very weird. Very weird story. Yeah. So maybe it was a big tribe of them that was like, we don't want you in our territory. They went in there and just killed all the campers.
That's
So yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. We'll have to look that one up. Let's see, campers, Russia killed. It's called, yeah, here we go. It's the Dyatlov group. Was an event in which 9 Russian hikers died in northern Ural Mountains between 1 and 2 February 1959 in uncertain circumstances. There was something that caused them to flee their tents, and they were found dead, and it was just from blunt force. So you have to read about that one. Physical trauma. And then 6 had died from hypothermia, and 3 had been killed by physical trauma. 1 victim had major skull damage, 2 had severe chest trauma, another had a small crack in the skull. 4 of the bodies were found lying, running in running water in the creek, and 3 of these had soft tissue damage from the head and face. 2 of the bodies were missing their eyes. 1 was missing its tongue. 1 was missing its eyebrows. So that could have been
Interesting.
Yeah, that could have been a group of Sasquatch that went in there and just killed them all. And they tried fleeing, and they weren't able to.
Well, it would seem if this was an ape that it's still out there, and it's kind of a great ape that's out there is unknown, it would be the great ape with the widest and largest land spread in the world, because it's very
well. I mean, I view it as, they moved around like humans did over time, and they ended up in different continents, and they, like, because they're so hairy, they're able to live up in cold climates, up in the mountains where it's there, and they kind of evolved to be very shy and not as social as other primates.
Could be that their eyesight would have to be incredible too in order to be able to see you before you see them.
Well, like I said, a lot of people believe they're nocturnal, so their eyesight would have to be really good to be nocturnal. So that could be something where they evolved to be more nocturnal primates.
I don't know. It's a possibility, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm fully on board with this one.
You should be the editor for Skeptic magazine.
I wouldn't. I don't know. I want to. If I'm going to talk about things, hopefully on a day-to-day basis, I could talk about things I believe in, not things I'm not in believe in. I mean, I don't know if I'm so much a skeptic. I think a lot of things are possible, but I like to see some of the evidence, and shit's gotta make sense. You know what I mean? Like there's got to be some correlation to things. Like I was just saying, Loch Ness monster. Like, what the fuck does it eat? With big ass dinosaurs chasing.
Well, like I said, like I told you, the theory is there's underground. Like the Loch Ness is so deep, there's underground caves that it can go through the cave.
So then it's got to be a warm blood. So it's got to be a warm blooded animal. So then Nessie would have to be warm blooded to be that large, be in water in a cave away from the sun, because every other
no, it uses the cave to go into the ocean. It uses the cave to go into the ocean. Like it goes into a bigger ocean. You see what I'm saying? It goes, yes. It goes in and out. Yep, that's interesting thing. So let's talk about the next one though, witches. Yep, go ahead.
So it would have to be kind of be breeding on the lake, or doing some kind of something on the lake, and then going out into the ocean to live and eat. Like salmon. Salmon live in the ocean all year, and then they go up the stream to spawn. They live in the ocean, but then they go up fresh water to spawn. So Loch Ness would be going through underwater tunnels into the lake, maybe spawning, maybe doing something, maybe having babies, who fucking knows, laying eggs, who knows, and then coming back into the ocean to feed. Is that kind of your theory?
Yeah, that's what I've read. Yeah, that's what I read. Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's get into the next one, witches. So witches, this is something that you're into a lot, but there are people out there in our communities who basically are witches, and they sit around and they put spells on people, and they do call all kinds of stuff. So
talk about Wiccans. You talk about Wiccans. Wiccans.
Well, this is your topic, so why don't you talk about this one? I don't know much about witches. Go ahead.
Um, well, my father, there's a saying in Spanish about witches that my father heard from his mother, and my grandmother heard from her mother, who heard it from her mother. And the saying goes like, don't believe in witches, but there sure as hell are some out there. Like there's some out there, just don't believe in it. It's kind of the saying goes. Look, I don't believe that the supernatural world exists. I really don't. I'm 40, about to be 42 this year. I've never seen shit. Haven't seen a fucking thing that couldn't be explained. I have never heard a noise or seen a shadow or been across anything that couldn't be explained. There were a lot of situations that I could have built up in my head to be bigger stories than they really were. But when I really came down to it, reality, the supernatural world does not fucking exist. If there were such things as witches and hex and spells, shit, some of these really hated figures in public society, like Trump, like, like Putin, like some of these people that are some of these people that are hated, they would just get witchcraft put on them. Like it'd be a thing that you could possibly rely on. And it's fucking not. It's just witches and psychics, which is our next topic. They're just, to be fair, there are some people out there who believe they're witches. There's a whole Wiccan thing going on where they're Wiccans and they do this ritual and that ritual, and they believe they're witches. There's definitely people out there who believe they got superpowers.
They killed 90,000 people who they accused of being witches in 300 years in Europe.
I believe it. Salem too. Yeah. In the U.S., there were some people being killed over being, accused of being.
So I mean, they accuse them of being witches. Hence, there are witches. I mean, you see what I'm saying?
Okay, so I could settle this. Okay, there are witches, but the supernatural world doesn't exist, and nobody has superpowers.
Well, how do you know that? Because here's the thing: like, if you let's say you want to. Let's say there's a woman out there, because we always think, women as witches, right? Even though men can be witches, but let's use a woman example. Let's say she really, really likes you, Rick, and she sits around and she does her spells to make you like her. And then like you end up falling in love with her and you end up, marrying her. Is that not witchcraft?
No, that's cool. That's called good pussy. That's not witchcraft.
No, that's but I mean, like
good head. She probably had good head, good puss. She's good conversation. Like,
yeah, but you weren't into her before, but then she kind of got the spell going, and whatever you want to call it, whether it be like a meditation, a prayer, anything. Like, please let like Ricky V. Rock fall in love with me, let him want to be with me, and stuff like that, and in lighting the little thing or whatever. And then you end up falling in love with her.
Well, if I don't think that's ever happened to me. I don't think anybody's ever tried that. Listen, when I say that there are no witches, I've been around it. Like, I've been around Santeria. Growing up in New York, there's a huge Puerto Rican community that believe in Santeria and Santos and all of that stuff. I've been around it. I've paid what I thought were witches and sidekicks as a younger man to see if I could get some clarity in the world when I was trying to make my way in the world. None of all that shit is garbage, bro.
Brujeria.
It's trash. I read, bro, for voodoo to work the way that they see voodoo works, you have to drink something. Like, they have to give you a fucking something to make you drink, to make you go crazy or make you do something. And then, I believe in some of that. I believe in the witchcraft when the witch mixes something like scopolamine with shrooms or blowfish or pufferfish, poison, and it gets fed to you. And then you become like a zombie corpse where you like can't fucking move, but you're still alive and you're paralyzed. Like, these things I kind of sort of can maybe get behind. I could get behind, a witch doctor giving you ayahuasca, and then you find your spirit animal and you go into the spirit world because of a fucking crazy ass DMT trip off of the ayahuasca. Like, I could see some of that shit. Okay, yeah. But actual like I'm in my office or my house somewhere, and some lady or some dude is got a picture of me, and they're doing enchantments and sing songs and shit in the distance, miles away, and it's gonna affect my life somehow. If that was real, then every political figure in the world that people have been trying to get rid of would have been gotten rid of already. You know, there would have been some Puerto Rican lady in NY with all kinds of witchcraft power that would have killed a government official she dislikes. Like, this shit is just not fucking real, bro. It's not. And I've been to it. I had a friend, somebody I really respected, and who went to a psychic, and he told me she was fucking incredible. She was great. She was awesome. I should go. This guy was older than me, right? The psychic starts fishing and starts saying things, and then as you react, she knows if she is right or wrong, and then she'll keep following that note. So when I went to psychics, which I've done it a couple of times, just for entertainment purposes, I clasp my hands in between my legs, I shut the fuck up, and I put the best poker face I can. And when she starts mouthing off shit, and I just stay real still, and I don't say anything. I don't give her a response. And then she'll start asking me, is that how it is? Or is that what's going on? I'd be like, well, I came here hoping you would tell me what's going on. And none of them have ever been able to hit on anything, bro. And it's funny because I had like family members and friends, people I respect. I want to meet a real witch. Listen, if witchcraft was real, I'd be deep in it. This would be the Black Magic podcast, not the Evolutionary Steroid podcast. This would be the Black Magic, how to live a great life and build a world around yourself using witchcraft. Okay. And fucking, and cutting goats and chickens' heads off and smoking cigars, which is what, Santeria and Voodoo does. They build a great life through doing this and that. It has to be the cop, but it doesn't fucking exist. Been through it, try to do it, try to, looked at it, see it. It's not fucking real. You go to a psychic, any of you guys that believe in psychics, go to a psychic you don't have a relationship with, because the one that knows you already, you've been fucking giving your money to, she knows all your shit. The one doesn't fucking know you. And you just sit there, shut the fuck up, put on your best poker face. Doesn't matter what she says. Don't say uh-huh, or don't say don't say nothing. No uhs, no uh-huhs, no looks, no nothing. Poker face that shit. And she will get everything wrong about you. Absolutely everything. You might tell her your age, date of birth, whatever. If she asks, are you married? I'm like, well, you tell me how that's what's going on with my emotional situation. I was hoping you tell me what's going on with my emotional situation. Look, there was a lady that used to go on the Montel show. I think her last name was Brown or something. Sidekick Brown. She used to be on the Montel Williams show back in the day. One time she was asked about a missing persons case.
Sylvia Brown.
Yeah. And she said the girl was dead. It
was the girl that got abducted in Cleveland by that guy.
Years and years later, the girl.
She said that she was dead, and then years and years later, she was the one that they
found her. Yeah. And she said she was watching the TV show, like she could overhear of her saying that she was dead. Like, come on,
yeah.
Look,
that lady. See, here's the thing. 99% of these psychics are fucking fraudsters. They're not real. They give the real psychics a bad name. If you find a real psychic isn't going to be able to sit down with you like that and like read you and like tell you your future and tell you about yourself and stuff. That's not how being a psychic works. Because I have, it runs in my family. One of my cousins is actually one of the top psychics in the world. And he's been on TV shows and all kinds of shit. I don't really follow the guy. I mean, he could be a fraudster. I have no fucking clue. But I'm just telling you, like, I've had psychic visions. I've had psychic visions on major events. I've had psychic visions with work. I've had psychic visions with my own future. I've had premonitions of what's going to happen. I've had these really intense dreams that have come true. So there is an ability to be psychic, but it's not a black and white thing where you can just say, I can sit down with you, Rick, and just read you and tell you you're going to meet some girl in 5 years from now. She's going to be from this country, you're going to meet her in this place. I can't do that, but I might have a dream of you meeting a girl or something. And that may give me a premonition of what's going to happen. You see what I'm saying? So there is something in our brains that allow us to kind of predict the future. It's just a matter of some people are really good at it and some people aren't. So, but yeah, 99% of these psychics, I would disagree with you on going to see a psychic. I won't even go, because what they're going to do is a lot of these psychics, what they'll try to do is they'll try to scare you. They'll try to scare you into seeing them again. They'll try to scare you into removing a hex that was put on you by someone. Oh, I need $1,000 to remove the hex, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of these people that's what they'll do. So I wouldn't even go see a psychic. Like these psychics that advertise that they're psychics and all that stuff, they're not. Like a real psychic wouldn't be able to have you pay them money and be able to tell you stuff. That's not how it works. It's not something that you can just control. So, I mean, it's something, but we've seen psychics. I've seen stories of people having visions and dreams about certain crimes. And they went to the police and they said, look, I think I know about this crime. I can tell you where it took place. I can tell you where the body is. I had a vision and all this stuff. And the police listened to them, and the police were able to use that information to find the missing body or solve the crime. So it absolutely is something. It's a phenomenon that exists, but it's not something that everyone is going to be able to do. Number one, and number two, you have to hone your craft and try to figure out. I've heard stories I've definitely, look, coming from South America, I've definitely heard some crazy witch stories. I just ain't never seen any, or I never really seen any of that. And look, and something like Santeria in the US, it's a big monetary structure. These guys trade a lot of money. The top guys get paid to help the bottom guys come along. And it's a lot of it is money oriented, like every religion, I guess. So I mean, I've heard stories too, Steve, many of them. I've heard of psychics being completely wrong about where to find a body and where to find a victim. And I've heard stories of psychics that actually give good clues and hit it off. I've heard and seen kind of both, but never had any real good personal experience with it. Never had any real good, believable experience with it. My whole saying, I've been saying this for 20 something years, is that I wouldn't say 20, more like 15 years, is that the supernatural world just doesn't exist. The supernatural world, psychics, witches, all of that shit, it just doesn't exist. So if I were to have a premonition about you and tell you, oh, Rick, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and it ends up happening, would you change your opinion? Or would you say, oh, that's just a coincidence?
It would depend how good it is. It would depend how good and how well put together it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I mean, I've had that happen. I've had that happen to me many times. So I'm not going to mention, I've had some premonitions about events that will be occurring, but I'm not going to mention it on this podcast, because if I were to say them, I would be worried if it did happen that I would, you know what I'm saying? It's like if you were to predict a train is going to derail in New Mexico, which is not what I'm saying. It had nothing to do. I'm just giving you an example. And it actually were to happen, then they would think, oh my gosh, you're the one who did it. You're the one that made that train derail. You see what I'm saying? That's why I don't mention it to people unless they're really close to me. But yeah, I've had some visions of current events that have actually occurred, and it's fucking scary, man. I've had, so I mean, yeah, I mean, I'll tell you after the podcast, but you have to keep it between us. In fact, I'm going to tell you something, a current event that's going to happen, but you have to keep it between us. And then when it does happen, you'll
to me directly or in the world.
No, it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. It may have something to do with you, actually. because it's something that's going to happen. But yeah, we'll talk about it after. Remind me, I'll tell you after the podcast. You have to keep it quiet though between us.
I promise.
Yep. All right. So the next one we're going to talk about is Chupacabra, and Chupacabra is Spanish for goat sucker. Is that correct? Is that the translation?
It is goat sucker. That is what it is.
So chupa means goat, and then cabra means suck, or is the opposite?
Chupa means suck.
Okay, so chupa my dick means if you're ever.
I thought you would know what chupa means. Dating all those Cuban strippers in South Florida. Because I know Steve loves some strippers. So you dated Cuban strippers down in
Cubano.
You never had a Cuban stripper saying "Papi te lo voy a chupar." You never had one of them Cuban strippers you date.
No.
Say,
say
she's going to chupar until you pass out. Never.
That's funny.
I thought you would have learned what that word means by now. They didn't know them Cuban strippers.
Yeah. So cabra means goat.
That's right.
Like my cabra needs food. So if I go up to someone and say my cabra needs food, it means that my goat needs food. So chupacabra, it started out from what I'm aware of. It started out in Puerto Rico, and a farmer went out. He heard some noises at night. He went out to check on his goats, and his goats were like mutilated, and like the blood was sucked out of them. So then the newspaper reporter who reported on the incident, he put Chupacabra like as a title or something like that. And then that's where I got the name Chupacabra. And it's some creature that we don't know about, but it's weird about the Chupacabra, Rick, is in Latin areas is where the Chupacabra sightings happen. So they happen in South America, Central America, Mexico, Texas, Florida, anywhere in the United States that has a Latin population, Southern California. That's where the Chupacabra seems to get cited for some reason, but nowhere else in the world is the Chupacabra something. So I think that's interesting compared to Sasquatch, because Sasquatch and Bigfoot are all over the world. You have Yeti, you have, different names depending on the continent. But with the Chupacabra, it's just Latin America. So is it something that's just part of Latin American folklore? Is it something where it's some type of creature that just likes the climate and likes hanging around, the warmer climates of Latin America and the Caribbean? Or is it something that's, just something completely made up, and maybe the guy, his goats were attacked by some type of dog or wolves or something? So what are your thoughts on this? It's something you've heard of Chupacabra as a child, or is this something that you've heard about as an adult? Is it something you grew up with?
I was already in the States watching Telemundo and Univision talk about a Chupacabra. They said it was maybe an animal that had escaped from some kind of a government testing facility, and it was out there, and who knows, maybe could have been, who freaking knows. But I think a lot of the deaths and problems with livestock that were attributed to the Chupacabra might have been just farmers in shock and shame, upset because their livestock had died, and maybe it was a disease. Maybe they didn't take care of some of them properly. Maybe they left their pens or wherever they were keeping their chickens, because they also ate chickens, keeping them in places where they weren't protected. I think it's got more may have more to do with that, because I don't know. It's a lot of it doesn't make a ton of sense, but I mean, it's possible. It's the story that I hear could have been a creature that was created in a lab for some sort of experiment. I could see that happening. I could see us in some parts of the world having a lab experiments where we're splicing and adding and messing with DNA that would make some kind of a creature that would be carnivorous. Why not? Look, you can breed a tiger and a lion and get a liger, which is a huge cat, bigger than either of those. Okay, it's a liger. There are different things out there in nature that can mix. You can mix DNA and get a different result. So could it be possible? Probably could have been. It was interesting that Chupacabra sightings and deaths and stuff were really going on for a while, and then they kind of died off, or at least the reports died off, because livestock dies all the time. Livestock, sometimes they get sick, sometimes something happens, something in the water, who knows, and livestock dies in mass. Sometimes it's happened to farmers for different reasons. Sometimes predators get into the pens and kill some of these livestock. So I'm pretty sure livestock has not stopped dying, but maybe we've stopped attributing it to Chupacabra. So could Chupacabra be real? I don't know. It's plausible. Maybe. Why not? Could be. Is it a reality? Who knows, man? Who knows? Livestock has been dying mysteriously since the beginning of time, since we started to have livestock. Livestock has been kind of fucking, our investment has been dying on us here and there for whatever reason. And, I don't know. It's a really hard one to give a real opinion on.
Yeah. And it's one of these things where it could be, pranks. It could be a lot of different things. So, this is one that I think, we're going to have to keep an eye on over the next, 10, 20 years. I think it's one we'll have to keep an eye on. Is it just one of these things, or is it just like a bunch? If it does exist, it's kind of weird, but there's all kinds of creatures that are out there. And we don't really know. So yeah. The last one we're going to talk about is La Llorona. So this one is one, we talked about this one before in a prior podcast, but it got deleted. So it's a lost episode. In the La Llorona, I don't know, Rick, if you want to tell the story really quick, or you want me to tell it?
So apparently the story of La Llorona goes something along the lines of a lady who was in love with some guy, but she already had children from a previous relationship. And in order for her to go make a new life with the guy, she needed to get rid of her children. So she apparently went and drowned them. And then she went and tried to have a relationship with the new guy, but I think he left her at the altar. And then she had neither her children nor the guy, or something like that. I think that's kind of sort of how the story goes. I should be fucking ashamed of myself. La Llorona is Colombian, and I am from Colombia, and I don't know the whole story accurately.
Yeah, the story was, though, she threw the kids in, and then she felt bad, so she jumped in the water after them, and she drowned along with the kids. You think you missed that part? No, apparently the story is she went to the guy. The guy said no, and then she went back to the river where she dropped her kids, trying to find them, crying and wailing, asking God to bring him back. Obviously, the kids weren't going to come back, so then she drowned herself. But apparently, I think La Llorona is in a wedding dress, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, the way the story goes, I'm about to research it now. La Llorona is supposed to show up as a very scary looking corpse of a woman in a wedding dress. I think the story. It's like a white dress. Yeah, it's like a white dress.
The guy left her at the altar. Yeah.
So there's been like different stories, but it all boils down to a woman basically who she kills the kids, and she gets rejected by this guy. So I think the whole moral of it is to be like grateful for your family. And basically it's told to children, like, you're in a situation. I never heard it. I never heard it until a couple of years ago. I was watching a paranormal show, but I think it's told to a lot of Latin children to kind of make them scared to go near water at night, to kind of prevent them from drowning, to kind of prevent them from staying out late. And maybe that's my theory behind it. But I think, this is definitely like some type of folklore, but there is a basis behind it of some type of like a haunting that's near water. Like if someone had drowned in a lake and they're haunting the lake, it's something where, the ghosts would be haunting the lake type of thing. So there is some basis behind it, but the kind of basis specifically about the La Llorona is, I think, has more to do with like a Latin folklore. So what do you think about this?
right. So growing up in Colombia and listening to stories from my grandmother, I got a different origin story than because I just looked it up. I found on Wikipedia some origin stories, and apparently La Llorona is not exclusive to Colombia. Venezuela has a version of it and stuff. So there's different versions. One of them is that a beautiful woman named Maria is married to a rich ranchero conquistador. This is like colonial times, to whom she bears two children. One day, Maria sees her husband with another woman. In a fit of blind rage, she drowns the children in the river, which she immediately regrets. Unable to save them and consumed by guilt, she drowns herself, but as well as unable to enter the afterlife, forced to live in purgatory and roam the earth until she finds her children. In another version of the story, her children are illegitimate, and she drowns them so that their father cannot take them away to be raised by his new wife. There's some evidence that the story of La Llorona is from pre-Hispanic origins, before the Spaniards came to the new land. And but La Llorona is mostly associated with a colonial era. And it's always some kind of dynamic between Spanish conquistadors and indigenous women. The most common one seems to be that she was being an indigenous woman who murdered her own children, which she bore from a wealthy Spaniard after he abandoned her. So the wealthy Spaniard had two children with this woman. He abandoned her, and she went and drowned them. So, but there's always La Llorona is a villain. You know, she's always got the villainous quality of committing infanticide. You know, murdering one's own blood. So that's kind of always the narrative of La Llorona. And there's different versions of why she did it. The story of La Llorona, women murdering their own children, then committing suicide, or sometimes never committing suicide at all. It's something that's kind of been done over and over again. In the US, there was that woman who claimed a black guy carjacked her, took her two children, and then drove the car into a lake. And the two kids were found drowned in a lake. And then it all came out that it was her that did it. Apparently, she threw her kids in a lake, and it seems it had something to do with, trying to spite the father, or trying to either spite the father or her trying to get a refresh on her life and start over again without
her name
children.
was Susan Smith. Smith from South Carolina.
There was another young girl who had a daughter, and apparently carrying her daughter around everywhere and having to care for her daughter was just a little too much hassle. So she killed the baby. I tried to pretend like it was some kind of natural death or some disappearance or something. I can't remember off the top of my head. And then she went to start living life once the daughter was gone, and she didn't have to worry about a babysitter or where the baby was or what she ate. She was out partying, hanging out, tattooed the beautiful life or something on her back or somewhere, and she was just living it up. So apparently this infanticide of killing your own children in order to start a new life, starting over, spite the father, spite the family, something like that. It's a recurring theme in society. Men too will kill their children and wives. So I mean, it's a recurring theme. I think it might have been La Llorona was a warning tale for any women who thought that giving into societal pressure or giving into any kind of pressure to hurt or abandon their children would only end up in regret, would only end up in, wandering the earth looking for them, giving your children up in order to be free again, hurting your children to spite the father, abandoning your children or killing your children in order to start over with a new man. Those are all kind of, those have always been themes of La Llorona, and it always ends up bad. It ends up with eternal punishment. I think it's kind of where that shit comes from.
Yeah, and is a classic situation? Is La Llorona real? And the answer is yes. La Llorona is real. There's been, like Rick said, there's real life situations where mothers have killed their kids. There's been men who've killed their kids, and this is definitely like this woman, Susan Smith, had mental issues. She was in
She
love
was
with
on
a
TV
man.
crying. She's a good example of La Llorona. She drowned her old children and she was crying about it on TV.
Yeah. So it is.
And everybody
it is
heard her
something
cry.
real.
Everybody heard her cry.
Yep. But she, she wanted, I guess the story is, I read it really quick just now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but she was in love with a guy, a wealthy man in town, and he didn't want kids. So in her, in her mind, she thought, well, let me just solve the issue by drowning my kids. This way he'll love me, but so that's what she did. She basically destroyed her family so that she could go with this guy who didn't want kids. In her mind, that would work. And so she admitted like a week or two later that it was not an African American who, of course, she wants to blame African American. It has to be an African American. It can't be a white guy that stole her car. It has to be African American, because the South has a history of lynching, black people. So she wanted to blame it on a black guy. And luckily, people were skeptical of it. But if this had happened 100 years ago, it would have been a different situation. They probably would have went and killed every black dude in the town, So if this stuff has been happening,
they would have found some guys and lynched them. Yeah, they would have found some dude and
lynched
exactly.
Them. But I mean, this has been happening for forever, and that's just the proof. Even since colonial times, people have been killing their own offspring. And it's really sad that humans are like this. I don't know her I don't know her mental situation or whatever. I didn't read it, but it's a disgusting story. So yeah, this is real. The llorona is definitely a real thing. And I don't know now if she's in prison right now, screaming and crying every day over what she did. So it's just beyond horrible the way it is. So she's probably doing that, what La Llorona is doing, seeking, for the rest of her life, dreaming about her kids and wandering, looking for them. And that's what she will do in her eternity, if you believe in that sort of thing. So yeah, guys, a really fun episode. Come on the forums. Let us know what you think when this gets, check out the link to the podcast and come on the forums and talk about it. This is good, fun, lighthearted stuff that we're talking about. And a lot of these stories kind of connect to real life things, that are out there. So, it's kind of cool stuff. I like this shit, this shit's kind of interesting. I'm more of a nonfiction, real science person, but I like, this shit too. I'm saying it's okay to like weird things and have fun with it. So it's good fun. All right, guys. We'll talk to you guys next one.
I just looked it up. It happened in 1994, and Susan Smith was sentenced to life in prison.
Yep, she admitted it. So
yeah.
All right, guys. Yep, we'll talk to you guys next one. Have a good one.
Have a good one, Steve. Have a good one, guys.
Guys, this is the required legal disclaimer. We are only sharing our experience from years of steroid use. We are not doctors, and none of what we say should be regarded as medical advice. Always check with your doctor before taking any drugs or starting any training program.